the man that I want my oldest son to be when he turns 18, one, it can't look like 1,000, different characteristics. He's a great ball player. Like there are elements of that he needs to be able to choose. Like what I care is that he's a man of faith, character, courage, compassion, and excellence. Those are the 5 characteristics that I want people to be able to describe my children with. It isn't athletic, a great ball player. The things that I grew up with, those 5 core elements, I think, are what defines successful people, and especially those with an internal perspective. And to shape them, to guide them to that, doesn't happen overnight.
Welcome to Frankly Fatherhood, where we discuss and explore all things fatherhood. Today we have a special guest on for you all. He's a husband, he's a father, business owner of Croxall Construction Company, and a friend. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Hayden Croxall. Thank you for coming on today. I think everyone would probably be interested, before we get into the heavy-hitter questions, what did your household look like? What was it like growing up in your household?
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for having me, Felix. I have 2 younger brothers. I'm the oldest of us 3. We're all within 5 years total of each other. My dad is an entrepreneur, and so kind of grew up around that, both the really good times and the really hard times that come with being an entrepreneur. He's an extremely hard worker, but he made it to every ball game growing up, and so even with kind of that heavy workload, he was still present in the best way that he knew how. My mom is an immigrant. She's from Norway, and so grew up with 2 different cultures. We're really thankful for that upbringing, but it was everything that you can imagine with an all-boy household.
When it comes to growing up in a household, your father's an entrepreneur. What would you say is the thing you learned that was most valuable to you?
Yeah, so in 2006, my dad lost pretty much everything. Outside of our house and his family, all of his investments, his business was gone. And for a lot of guys, that would have taken him out. The recession was a really dark time for a lot of families, but my dad responded to that and became more present, more patient, and just shifted his perspective in the midst of a really hard time. And went back at it, and he started completely over and built a business that was larger than the one that he had before as a result. And so if there's one thing that I learned from my dad, it was just the importance of character and work ethic. That those two characteristics are the difference between what I would say is a good life and something else. And so really grateful for that lesson that I had from my dad. Even though he never necessarily verbalized that lesson to us, he demonstrated it, and that meant that we learned it.
So he demonstrated that in not just his work ethic, building that business, but what happened when it crumbled. And then throughout that whole process, being able to be present for you guys, going to your games. Like you said, with 3 boys, that can be difficult to manage when you're all into something. And then that's not even including the conflict and things that are kind of natural for brothers to have, especially when you're within that 5-year span. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to jump into some of the questions.
Yeah, sure.
So we've talked about this before. We've actually been to several gatherings together. My wife and I, we have a goal of having 4 children, and of course, God laughs at plans, right? So that could look like 6. That could look like just 1 more. I don't know.
Yeah.
My hope is 4, but we are halfway there now. If that's to be met, what advice would you give to fathers who have and or want to have a big family? And how do you navigate the different personalities, interests, needs, and bond while also being the provider?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that we didn't plan on having 9. And so I was thinking that we might land around 5, and now we're at 9. So I think that you are right in kind of understanding the nuance that we can have this idea of what we want it to be, but I think that sometimes God takes us on journeys that we didn't think that we were ready for. And so to that point, I mean, there's one thing that I've learned is that I don't know a lot. That's and so that realization forces you to be humble. And so every single day I'm learning. Fatherhood, more than anything, is a process of formation. It's just another tool that God uses to form us into the man that he wants us to be, which is the image of Jesus. And so, I mean, for me, I'm not a perfect father. There are things that I do that I know I can do better, and sometimes my kids will tell you, give me feedback too, which I welcome. But with that, having a lot of kids, it's challenging because you've only got X amount of time in the day. You can't make more time, and more kids means that there's more mouths to feed, and so there is that pressure. But at the same time, if it's done anything for me, from a formation standpoint, it's made me more intentional. And so everything that I do has a deep intention behind it. And so I'm not going and binge watching Netflix. I mean, I'm not spending a ton of time watching sports or going to the bar with my friends. I mean, like whatever else you think of kind of stereotypical fatherhood. My life doesn't necessarily look like that, but I surround myself with guys who are trying to become like Jesus and trying to be present and intentional fathers. And so that helps drive me towards that idea of a deep intention behind everything that I'm doing. And so with my kids, and again, I don't do it perfect, but having 9 and having them kind of spread out across some different age groups and seasons, it does require that intention. And so sometimes it looks like me taking, 1 or 2 of them on like a little special breakfast date before school, or taking another group of them on a bike ride while I'm, running and pushing the baby. I mean, it looks different in different seasons, but the key behind it all is the intention. And so if you're not deeply intentional with everything that you're doing, you're gonna miss those opportunities, especially as you have more and more kids, because it's not easy with 2, but you take 2 and you multiply that by 2, and all of a sudden, it isn't just a matter of addition and subtraction, it's multiplication in terms of complexity.
Right.
And so that's where the intention becomes all that more important.
Because they're multi-dimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm just curious, this is kind of off the cuff. You grew up, dad entrepreneur, we discussed this. Highs and lows, your dad was intentional. That's what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
You're intentional. How do you balance that, being intentional, as well as the stresses that can come with being an entrepreneur and having to build something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all comes down to perspective.
Okay.
So the reality with the businesses that we're building, we have a mission behind them.
Okay.
And so while we do have to make money, that's where we are a for-profit company, we have to be. But at the end of the day, there's a mission behind it. And so for us, if there's not something internal driving what we're doing in our work, then why are we doing it? And so for us, our mission statement is bettering the lives of families. Well, that looks like bettering the lives of my family. Bettering the life of my family, bettering the lives of our employees' families, our subs' families, our vendors' families, our clients, and then our community. And so that for us is the key. Now, it doesn't mean do I work a lot. There are some late evenings and early mornings at times. That's where that intention comes in. Just because, we look at 24 hours in a day, and it can either be all the time in the world or it can be no time at all. And how we're intentional in building, out our day, that's where the key is. And for me, one of the reasons I love being an entrepreneur is that I get to build my own schedule. Mm-hmm. So if I wasted an entire day, it's usually self-inflicted, and it means that the intention wasn't there. Okay. So that for me is really what I focus on.
Wow, okay. Intentionality, I love that. So when it comes to the household you grew up in, you learned about the importance of character and work ethic. Mm-hmm. And then when it came to being there for your kids, for your children, despite the workload, despite everything that you're juggling, something that you learned was that there's this process of formation. There's a lot that we just don't know. And it's important to be intentional because of that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot we don't know, and you're unintentional, well, that can really be harmful to the system. Like you said, if I'm binge watching Netflix, I'm missing moments with my children. Mm-hmm. I'm missing moments where I could build myself, where I could build a company. Who's to say what the best version of ourselves is if we're over our head and all kinds of entertainment, or even being distracted with unnecessary pleasures of the world, right? That interrupt that formation, that movement towards Christ. I'd be curious to know, you experienced a hardship with one of those children amidst the pandemic, unrelated to the pandemic, and they almost did not make it. What did that season do to the way you fathered the children who came after and the ones who were already present?
Yeah, so that was Vera. She was born in June 2020, and she had a heart defect, and ended up in ICU here in Chattanooga before ending up in the cardiac ICU in Atlanta, and then finally in Boston, where she had her open heart surgery. And definitely, that was hardest season we've ever walked, just because there were conversations with doctors where they told us, hey, like, we don't know if she's going to make it. So, we're looking at our tiny little baby and not knowing if she, would survive. And so that does something to you. I mean, like, there's a quote unquote, trauma element to that we've had to navigate, Katie and I have. But if it does anything, and I wish that, maybe I just learned the lesson innately. I wish we didn't have to go through some of these life circumstances to like really grasp this stuff. But life is the greatest teacher, and so for us, I mean, that gave us perspective. You don't get. Life is a gift. This time that we have with our children, with our family, it is a gift. It puts things in perspective. So like, no matter how poorly something goes on a project or how angry maybe a client might be, like, I'm never going to be in as hard of a situation on a job as I was in that hospital room. And so like it means it's helped me kind of sweat the small stuff and the big stuff too. It doesn't mean that we don't care, like we want to do an excellent job for our clients, but like at the end of the day, there's a heck of a lot of difference between a house or a building and a life. And so
your daughter's life.
Yeah, especially my daughter's life.
Huge difference.
And so it puts things in perspective, and it helps you realize, man, you know what? Making that extra money or selling that extra project, like whatever it is, like, is it worth this time that I have with my kids? Because you don't get a 2.0 with your kids. I got to see with my dad, he had a 2.0 with his business. Started over. And you see that happen all the time. Guys lose things in their 30s or their 40s, even their 50s, and they start over and they become more successful than they ever were. You can have a 2.0 with work. You can't have a 2.0 with your kids. And so for me, that is added to the intention that I'm really trying to live my life, especially right now in my 30s, because this is the longest decade that I'll have my children in my home. I'll hit my 40s and they'll start tapering off and graduating, going out into the world. 30s is the longest one that they're in my house. And so while I want to be deeply intentional with work and to do well, I'm also trying to be extremely intentional with my children, to be present as best as I can. And presence requires intentionality. One of those quality over quantity components as well. So
it's created this mindset with everything that you do. Is this worth me not having this time with my children? And it's almost like, is it contributing to that? Right? So, for example, work might take you away from time with your children. Is it contributing to the system, or is it harming the system?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's powerful stuff. And that's something that like I wrestle with. Trying to build something or build some things is something I wrestle with, and I have never experienced something like that. And I think that I pray every single time my wife gets pregnant that our children come out healthy. And I think it's honestly making me think about, maybe I should change that prayer a little bit, and that, add that added layer of, prepare me. Prepare me for whatever may come, because I think we forget that, life is hard, and death is no respecter of persons. Everyone is going to have a beginning and have an end, and so the hope is that we're prepared for that, so that we can be the best that we can be in those moments for our children, so that they could learn how to grieve. Yeah, they could learn how to withstand suffering. Right, formation of Christ.
And like the quote's probably a little bit cliche at this point, but like people talk about the dash in between your birth date and your death date. Like that's all that we have. And apart from the quote, like I think that reality is something that I try to dwell on. Like I would like to think that I'll live to be 60 or 90 or whatever it is, and quote unquote, be in a place to retire. But like I don't know. Like for all I know, I might have 5 years, I may have 1 year. And I mean, I've known people who've passed away, I've known fathers who've passed away, and so the reality of life and how fragile it is, it should make us humble, and that humility should drive us towards intention. And so again, for us, do I work hard? Yes. Yeah. But if it's not all, exactly to your point, pushing me towards that goal of bettering the lives of families, starting with my own, then it's for naught.
You're on.
And so that is, I think that's the key. And that's where I've had to just try to balance this season, right? Because your 30s are really like where you have the opportunity to build your career the most. But it's also, again, that it's also when you're going to have this highest tension at home from a financial standpoint, because you've got growing children, a growing career, and your finances are really probably going to be the tightest that they're ever going to be.
Yeah.
And so you've got this kind of triad of tensions going on. And so I feel like if I can navigate this well, 40s and 50s are going to be awesome. But I want to hit my 40s with these 3 goals in mind. And I don't mean to go off the beaten path here, but
No, please, I'm curious.
the 3 goals are, I want to be further along in my faith journey. So I want to be made more into the image of Christ, at the age of 40 than I was at the age of 30. Second, I want to be more in love with my wife than I was at 30. And with my children, I want them to want to spend time with me. If I can hit 40 with those 3 goals achieved, then that's a successful decade. I say that because, again, you don't get another 2.0 with your kids. And so if I can't raise my children with the intention and discipline where they want to be around me, have I really, like, if I've given them the world, but they don't want to spend time with me, like, have I really raised them where I want to? And so that's how I look at it. And so I've got this short window, what is now under 8 years, to hit that goal. And so while I'm driving hard on the business side and want to do really well there, those are my 3 ultimate goals.
Okay.
And then once I hit 40 and kids are off and they're doing well, and parenting doesn't stop when your kids are 18.
Okay.
I know that because 2 of ours are 20.
Yeah, right.
But they'll be a little bit more self-sufficient, and at that point, if I need to drive hard on the business side, I can do that. But I won't get another round.
No. So we talked a little bit about not getting another round with our children, and you like, I'm sorry, I'm about to go off the beaten path. Is it okay if I chase that squirrel just a little bit? Just because I think it's all relevant. It's all tied into some of the things we talked about before in reference to what kind of father you are amidst the suffering. Even going back to the original question of how you're juggling all of this amidst being an entrepreneur. The other thing is, you said your goal is to be more in love with your wife. I love that. So what are some things that you're doing on, say, a daily basis? Maybe even one. If it's just one thing, I think that'd be extremely helpful, that you feel is moving you towards being more in love with your wife.
So this is a newer practice.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna give you 2 things. One, we spend every evening before we go to bed talking together, and she has the opportunity to ask me anything.
Okay.
In that time, and vice versa, and it's just a sacred window where we can be fully vulnerable and transparent with each other, and so that allows for any hurts to come out, any concerns, questions, or just natural, fun, free-flowing conversation.
Yeah.
But it's a time that is set aside every single night that we are together. Usually we'll go into a room next to our master that we call the retreat, and we'll sit down and talk. But sometimes it's just on the couch, and then we end in prayer. So that has been really good. And then the other thing that I've been doing recently, and it may sound odd, but I really can't recommend it enough. I'll stare at her, and like if she's off talking to somebody, like I'll just stop and stare at her, like, because in the midst of the busyness of this life, it's so easy to forget the reason, or I guess the person who you fell in love with. And so that for me has been a practice that I've more recently adopted, is just stopping myself and staring at her like, man, like what an incredible woman. Like the way that she interacts with others and cares for others, it's been really, really sweet.
Okay.
And so it's not
stop
creepy
and stare.
because, yeah, I'm her husband, so I'm allowed to stare at her.
I think it is weird being her husband and doing that. I think you're only supposed to do that when you're dating. No, and I love that. I love the fact that you're taking something that is so normal when you're dating.
Mm-hmm.
It's so normal when you think about it. You could remember when you first started interacting with her, and we would just I know I would.
Yeah.
I would just stare at her. I'm like, wow, she's so stunning.
Yeah.
But then when you're married and you tell us like you're
Hey,
watching your wife, someone else
change
was-
the diaper. I got this one over here. Like,
yeah, or like you'll stare at them, and then someone else will come in. What's going on? Is everything okay? And they're like, yeah, everything's okay. Have you seen her? She's gorgeous, But I love that. Just take the time to stare at her, to admire her, to remember, to be grateful for. And I think that's it. There's all these underlying things that you're doing while you're staring at her, and I think that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really is. Last question. Are you ready?
Yep.
What would you have to stop running from to become the father you know your children need you to be?
So I am I'm very driven, and that is to say, like, I'm a producer. Like I don't do a lot of things well, but if I do some things well, I can get things done.
Okay.
And I've always been very achievement kind of oriented, and so kids are not a short game; they're a long game. And the temptation that I oftentimes fall for is looking at them and saying, "Oh, you're not reaching my goal for you yet." Like, and being too impatient and not willing to sit with them in the tension of being little and learning and growing. And so, yeah, it's really like if there's one thing I'd have to run from, it would have to be exactly what I do well in business, which is achieve goals. And it's like, because with kids you can't do that. It is a slow grind. It's the difference between building a house and planting a field. And I'm not a farmer, but I've seen enough movies and TV shows to understand the process. You go out and first you have to remove kind of all the weeds, and you're going through and you're tilling the soil, and then you're planting the seed, and then you're covering up, and you're watering it, you're supplementing, and like so much has to happen for you to see this the tiniest bit of growth. Whereas like on the construction side, we go in with a bulldozer, like we're clearing the land, we're going with an excavator, like it happens quick, it happens fast. There's a lot of moving, like there's a lot of movement. With kids, it's the exact opposite, and it's those slow, like it's methodical. It's 1,000 touch points to see this tiny little bit of progress.
Sometimes you don't plant it in the right soil, or sometimes you don't water it as much as you need to, or you water it too much, or
And so that would be it. Is
okay.
Realizing that my kids are not just another achievement, and to have the patience to be able to walk with them with that in mind.
I think sitting with that is hard for me, because I've been talking to other fathers as well, and it seems to be this thing where we all feel the need to, as we're living in this world, as we've experienced some of the hardships, we all feel the need to like push our children. We all feel the need to, at least the fathers I've had the pleasure of talking with, like yourself, we want to push them to being strong in a world that's going to be hard on them. It's not going to coddle them. It's not always going to take care of them the way that we would.
Exactly.
And so it's like, do I need to push them harder? No, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too soft.
Yeah.
Nope. They have to do this a certain way, and it's almost like if we're not careful, we're trying to push them towards this goal in our heads, and we're not paying attention to, well, first of all, what does our role as a father look like, and then how can we guide them towards that, right? Like it says,
exactly.
Spare the rod, spoil the child, and this idea comes from the shepherd, right? And guiding, it's not bonking a sheep at it's guiding that sheep in the direction that it should go, and then also keeping in mind that child, like you said before, is multidimensional. It's got all these. This child has got all kinds of different facets to them, and they're so beautiful, and they're their own individual. And it's, well, as dads, it's like, how do we foster that? How do we not foster our own goals, but how do we foster their goals? Yeah. And so I love that stuff, and it's hard to sit with, because I find myself in your position where I'm like, I want so bad to just check that box, move you in that direction. Yeah. Okay, I think, that's helpful. It's helpful for me to just think about and reflect on, so that, when I'm interacting with my kid, he's like having a hard time with something. Maybe he doesn't need me to push him. Maybe he, sometimes he will.
Yeah.
Or maybe sometimes he just needs me to sit with him in that.
The key, like, kids are not products. And so you can't just produce, you can't just hit a button to produce that. I do think that, exactly what you're saying, a part of it is push. I push our kids, and I want them to grow up with character and work ethic. But in that, having the patience to say, there's a lot of time between 8 and 18. And it's the consistency in those million touch points between now and then that are what are going to make the difference. There's not one magic button to produce this drastic change in my kid that I want to see. And it's so that's really where you're kind of going back to the very beginning, like the intentionality comes in. It isn't going to happen. The man that I want my oldest son to be when he turns 18, one, it can't look like 1,000 different characteristics. He's a great ball player. Like there are elements of that he needs to be able to choose. Like what I care is that he's a man of faith, character, courage, compassion, and excellence. Those are the 5 characteristics. Those are the 5 characteristics that I want people to be able to describe my children with. It isn't athletic or a great ball player. Like the things that I grew up with.
Smart.
With but those 5 core elements, I think, are what defines successful people, and especially those with an internal perspective. And so that's what I want for my children, and to shape them, to guide them to that doesn't happen overnight.
No, I can't imagine.
And that's where I can grow impatient. I'm like, man, I told you yesterday to stop annoying your sister. Things like that. Like it isn't going to happen overnight. It's those 1,000 reminders. Hey, son, let's not talk to your sister that way. How can we talk to your sister? And it's being patient in the midst of that tension that I think that I struggle with.
Okay, being patient in the midst of tension and maintaining that consistency. Because, and this reminds me of something, and then we'll close. And that is, when I'm working with children using play therapy, something a supervisor said that I will just never forget. And that is, sometimes we get fixated, or we will focus on what they're doing instead of how. So they may be doing the same thing in that room. And you might say, they're coming in every single session, and they're doing the same thing. That doesn't, I don't understand. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? You blame yourself. There's guilt, there's shame. But we don't pay attention to how has that changed. While you're being consistent, how has that changed? Are they a little nicer?
Yeah.
Have they added a little word in there? Is it less frequent? Are they mean to their sister 10 times one week and then mean to them 9 the next?
Yeah.
That kind of, how is important. I think it's super encouraging. And that's what came to mind, is that idea of like, okay, we got to be consistent and we got to remember how they're doing it. Okay, so if I was to say, frankly, fatherhood is, and you thought of if you could say one word based on this interview, based on your fatherhood journey, what would that one word be?
Intentional.
Intentional.
Yeah.
Look, guys, follow us if you want more content like this, okay? I'm looking forward to what we have moving forward, and I think there's a lot of just beautiful quality information, and also just kind of letting you know that you're not alone. Comment down below if you have any moments like that where you struggle with intentionality, because frankly, fatherhood is being intentional. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time, brother.
I appreciate you.